here. I don't know about y'all. When they walked off, I was like, I'm about half tempted to make you stay. Man, what a powerful time of worship. Amen. Before I can go any farther, God, we just, Lord, I just feel your presence in such a mighty way today, God. Lord, as you have been building this message inside of me throughout this week, Lord, I have just felt such an expectancy, Lord, that, God, I need to ask your forgiveness for the other times that I've stood here and I really haven't felt that same expectancy in my spirit, Lord. But today is different.
Amen.
This message is different. God, these people, your people, myself included, my family, my babies, providing. God, there are seasons of change and transition in our life. Lord, these are tough, trying times for all of us. But all throughout this week, you have reminded me that you alone are God, and that you have never failed. Never, not once have you failed us. Your plans are good. Your plans are righteous and holy. And God, I thank you for that today. Father, I ask right now for people to have spirits prepared to receive your word that you have for them this morning. God, open our ears, open our hearts, and our minds to you today. That is my prayer. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Amen. And amen. As I was walking through the home, or my home, a few days ago, I passed my son Alex. Passed him going through the hallway. Buck understands it. He said, "Daddy, what are you preaching on this Sunday?" And I said, "Well, funny you should ask." I said, "Right where we're standing is what I'm preaching on." I said, "I'm preaching on hell in the hallways of life." He stood there for a moment. His little eyes began to light up, and he said, "Daddy, I got it. I know exactly what you're talking about this Sunday." I was like, "Oh, Lord." I said, "Lay it on me, son. What am I talking about?" He stood there for a minute. He gets up on me, bends down. "Daddy, you're going to talk about when you wake up in the middle of the night and you come out of your bedroom and you step in the hallway and it's pitch black dark and you have to go to the bathroom really, really bad." And he said, "It is so dark that you can't find your way to the bathroom door and you almost have an accident in your pants right there in the hallway." That's hell in the hallway, isn't it? Oh, that's my boy. That is our son. I said, "Close, Bubba, but not quite." Close, but not quite. You see, he did have one part right. Hallways are indeed an area of transition and change in our life. He was using his hallway to transition from his bedroom to the restroom. God places hallways, seasons of change and transition in our lives. These hallways can oftentimes be difficult, tight, places of constricting that we don't like. I don't like to be constricted. I don't like to feel like I'm being funneled into a place that I'm not even sure where I'm going at times. I want to look at a life by a man named Joseph in the Old Testament. Turn with me in your Bibles to Psalm 105. Psalm 105 in the Old Testament. We're going to be reading verses 16 through 19, Psalm 105. And we're going to look at the life of a man named Joseph. Joseph experienced many trials and tribulations during his life. He had many hallway experiences. During those times of trials and testing, God was growing him, moving him, transitioning him from one place to another. The Apostle Paul says it like this in Philippians 1 verse 23. He said, "I am in a strait." A strait. Now a strait is a narrow, thin body of water that connects two larger bodies of water together. And I thought to myself, what Paul is really saying there is he's giving us another analogy, another example of a hallway. And today, I want you to take a look with me in the life of Joseph as we look at these hallway experiences. As we turn to Psalm 105, I need you to understand something. Joseph had grown up in Israel. He had come up in a very well-to-do, prosperous family. He had done well. found favor with his father. He was highly sought after by his father, blessed and favored. God gives him a vision, a dream. And he shows Joseph that he is going to move him into a place of authority, power, and privilege in his life. He is basically going to make him the prime minister of Egypt. But in between this place of blessing, where he found himself with his family, in this place of blessing, where God was wanting to move him and transition him to, there was one long, hellish hall. And I want to take a look at those with you this morning, because I believe we can learn a lot. Because here's the real answer. Here's the real facts about it. How you respond in these hallways and tough times in your life is going to greatly determine what doors God can or cannot open for you. So keep that in mind as we move forward this morning. Psalm 105. Psalm 105, verses 16 through 19. When he summoned a famine on the land and broke all supply of bread, he had sent a man ahead of them, Joseph, who was sold as a slave. His feet were hurt with fetters. His neck was put in a collar of iron. Until what he had said came to pass, the word of the Lord tested him. I want you to see something very early on. In this verse, we read something, an important principle that many times I believe Christians have often overlooked, and it's one we really don't like to hear, so be prepared. Did you notice who sent the famine? It says he sent the famine on the land and broke all supply of bread. God sent the famine on the nation of Israel, his chosen people. Now why would God do that? Why would God send a time of hardship, a time of famine into your life or into the life of his children? There's that Old Testament God. The long beard, the lightning bolt, just waiting for you to do something wrong, right? No, not at all. You see, he's a good father. He is indeed a good father. I have 5 children. My wife and I try to raise them to the best of our ability. We try to set them on a path that we believe God has set before us to place them on. Every once in a while, they begin to stray. They begin to detour off of that path that we have set before them in life. And as a good father, I have to discipline my children. I have to make sure that I do whatever is necessary to get them back on that path in life that I know God wants them to be on. Sometimes they don't like it. Oftentimes it can be a painful experience for them. They can get very upset with me. You ever been there with God? Maybe you're sitting here today and you are experiencing a famine in your life, a drought, a time of brokenness, a time of lack. Maybe you're sitting here and it's relationally. Maybe your relationships in your life seem to be dry and dead. Maybe it's spiritually. Maybe you just feel like, man, I'm not hearing from God anymore. Man, I'm just not getting anything out of the Word. I just don't really feel like praying. I don't even know if they're getting through. I don't even know if He's listening. Maybe it's financial. Money's tight. Bills need to be paid. Maybe it's in your body. Maybe you received a doctor's report that didn't go the way you were hoping, didn't go the way you were planning, and you've experienced a time of famine in your life. I need you to understand that that's a whole. You see, God is wanting to transition you and position you for the promise He has for you. I need you to see something beautiful here, because that stung a little bit, didn't it? I don't like hearing that. God's going to send a famine into your life and He has to correct His children. Oh, don't want to hear it. Well, good. Listen to verse 17. What did He say? He said, I sent a man before them, Joseph, who was sold as a slave. Did you catch it? Check it out. Listen closely. I sent a man before them. Do you understand that long before God ever sent the famine onto the land and onto the people known as the nation of Israel, He had already set the man Joseph on a journey to go and be in a place of provision for the problem and the famine that He was going to send? Do you understand that God never sends a problem into your life without first sending the solution and the answer? Did you understand what He had done there? He has already long sent Joseph on a journey. Some of this journey is going to be very dark and bleak and painful in the life of Joseph. But He has already sent him on a long, arduous journey through some hellish hallways to prepare him to be the provision for the problem before He ever sent it to the people. That should give you some comfort there, folks. If you're in your place of famine right now, if you're in your place of doubt and fear and worry, maybe you're in lack financially, spiritually, relationally, emotionally, whatever it may be, I need you to know that God has already sent provision for your problem before He ever sent the problem to you. That should give us great comfort this morning indeed. Amen and amen. It's good to know that God always sends the solution before He ever sends the problem to us. I want to talk to you this morning about three things, if you're taking notes, that I believe we're going to see in this life of the man by the name of Joseph. The first one is trials. The trials of the hallway. Trials. Number two, going to look at the test. The test of the hallways. And lastly, we're going to look at the triumph. The triumph. So we're going to look at the trials, the test, and the triumph. Now I need you to understand something. There is a difference between a trial and a test. Oftentimes you'll see in the Word of God and in our lives that a trial will be followed up almost simultaneously, if not overlapping at times, with a test from God as well. And we're going to see that in the life of Joseph. You see, Joseph has made his way down some hellish hallways in life, and I don't have time to go over the whole story. Go back and read it. Go back and study the life of this man by the name of Joseph. Very powerful story indeed. But he has been in a place of provision and blessing. Found favor with his family. But you see, this was a man who thought he had everything in order. He is blessed and highly favored of his father. So much so that his brothers begin to grow jealous and envious of the life that he is living. So much so that they take him and throw him in a pit in the wilderness. Now, can you imagine what Joseph must be thinking there? Can you imagine how it must have felt when he finally came to the realization, this is who I've become? He was a spoiled. That's what he was, a spoiled brat. Walking around, flaunting his special jacket that his father had gave to him. Flaunting his favor and blessing before all of his siblings. It said he did little work, but yet he brought bad reports of his brother back to his father. He was a snitch on top of that. Not looking good for Joseph. But Joseph had a dream and a vision given to him by God. Not just once, but twice. A dream and a vision so powerful that Joseph now knows that I am going to be in a place of such power and authority and influence that you, my dad, my mom, my family, all of you are going to bow down at my feet. This man thought he had his stuff together, walking through life, just waiting on his dream to become his destiny. Now suddenly, things have derailed. Now suddenly, a life that was so well planned, so well thought out, everything seemed to be in order, and now you're lying flat on your back, abandoned, broken, hurt, confused, lost, in a pit in your life. Have you ever been there? Have you ever been just trucking through life, everything seemingly going well, just like you planned, and all of a sudden you're flat on your back? Your plans have derailed. Life has gone astray. You see, that is the first thing in your trials that the enemy will try to do to your calling in your life. he will always try to derail the plans God has for you. Now I want you to think about something. How does he derail? Good question. I want you to think about him lying flat on his back. Dark. No sign of hope. Family abandons you, leaves you there to die. Suddenly, a rope hits you in the face out of nowhere. You shimmied up thinking, oh, that was a good one, big brother. You had me going for a minute. You get out, there stands big brother. All right. You think everything's going well. Your spirits are beginning to rise. A little ray of hope, only to find out that he's not there to help you. He's there to sell you as a slave. He's not there with open arms to welcome you and to help you. He's there to harm you. There to send you off on your way down a long, hellish hallway on a trip to Egypt. Do you think for just a moment that Joseph might have gotten a little depressed? Now think about what spirit comes against you. Think about that. When you find your plans derailed in life, what's one of the first things the enemy sends your way? The spirit of depression. You become depressed. Things aren't working out like you thought. Things aren't going as you had planned. They don't look like they're ever going to get better, and suddenly you don't see any hope anymore. There's no light at the end of the tunnel. You grow very hopeless. Then guess what your hopelessness does? It begins to put a spin on the calling in your life. And you begin to view it much differently than you did before your fall into the pit. Isn't that how depression works? All of a sudden, life that was going so well, things still looking up. You have one minor glitch in the radar. And all of a sudden, the enemy has spun it in a totally different direction. And worse yet, we bought into it. Can you imagine that when Joseph comes up out of that pit, I can't help but think that the first thing he thought of was not to share his testimony with his brother. Let me tell you what God's going to do for me. Let me tell you what God's done for me. I can't help but think as he was being led away as a slave in bondage on that long, hellish hallway back to Egypt as a slave, I don't think for a moment that he began to tell people his testimony. You see, that's what depression and the enemy does. He'll use that to rob you of your testimony. It says you will overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of your testimony. Do you see how Satan uses that one little crack of depression as a leverage point to get in there, to start crying, to start lifting, to start making that divide between you and God greater and greater? I'm going to read something to you. It says in verse 19, until what he had said came to pass, the word of the Lord tested him. The word of the Lord tested him. Now, can you see here? He hasn't given in to depression, apparently. It doesn't say anything about him ever caving and being a depressed individual, walking around with his head down, telling everybody how sorry his life is. And I wish I could tell you that the enemy stopped right there, but he doesn't, because the next thing he comes against him with is the spirit of doubt. Can you imagine how many times, as he made that long trip to Egypt, that he must have begun to doubt that calling that God had already placed on his life? You ever been there? God, I face it constantly, guys. I'm like, God, I know what you said, but every once in a while, in the confines of those dark, hellish hallways in life, it's just hard for me to see it, and even harder for me to believe it. Because I give in at times to that spirit of doubt that he loves to throw into your mind. Can you imagine the number of times Joseph must have heard that voice in his mind? Look at where you're at. Look at who you are. Look at where you're headed. Look at all of the things your God has not done for you. Is He answering your prayers? Does He even hear you? Where's all of that provision now? As you stand in lack, as you stand there in brokenness, barrenness, being led off prisoner into a foreign land. Have you ever experienced those times in your life where you know God had a plan and a purpose and a path for you to walk? But now suddenly you feel like you've just been taken captive. You don't know how to get back on track and back on pace to this plan that God has for you. Because the enemy has got you to buy into depression and doubt. He has begun to use those cracks in your faith to be a leverage point to attack you. You see, it says that he roams about like a what? Like a hungry lion, seeking whom he can kill, steal, and destroy. You ever watch nature shows? I love them. Lions don't attack to help humans. They lie in wait. They hide. And they wait until one of the weak ones, one of the old ones, one of the injured ones falls back, falls away from the pack because they become easy prey. That's what he's wanting to do with us. He's just waiting for you to buy in to the spirit of fear, the spirit of doubt that he throws at you, because it begins to separate you from God. Then you become easy prey for the lion. I want you to think about that. If you really go back in your mind and you think about how many times you've been tried and tested, how many things you've faced in your life, really go back and think about what your greatest battles were. I can almost guarantee you one of them will be depression and one of them will be doubt. That is just how the enemy works. Psalm 105, verse 18. It says, his feet were hurt with fetters. This wasn't a fun journey, guys. They weren't making their way through with a pair of Nikes on across the desert. They had on fetters, chains, shackled around his neck, around his hands, and around his feet. And it said these fetters, these irons were hurting him, causing him physical pain. Do you understand that God inspired, through his Holy Spirit, the writers to pen those words? His feet were hurt with fetters. Why? I think it's beautiful that God is showing us and telling us, I'm not unfamiliar with your pain. I know it's a tough journey, man. I know it's hell in the hallway, brother. I feel you. I know what it's like. I could take off my shirt and show you. I've got some scars to prove that I know what it's like. I've been there. I know what it's like to pay a price, to achieve a dream that your daddy has for you. Because I paid the ultimate price for you. Can you imagine how beautiful that is to hear God tell us, I know your pain. I know where you're at. I haven't lost sight of you. I know what journey you're on. No matter how dark, how bleak, how hellish your hallway, he's saying, I know exactly where you are and exactly what you're going through. And I am not unfamiliar with your pain. Do you understand that? No matter where you're at in life, no matter how dark, how bleak, how barren, how dry, no matter where you may find yourself today, he knows exactly where you're at. And he is familiar with your pain. And he hasn't left you or forsaken you. He's right there with you through the hell and the hallways. Let's move on to our test. The testing. We talked about the trials. Now we talk about the testing. And the best way that I can describe the testing in my little feeble mind is that I had to think about quality control at a company. You know, if you put out a product, if you make something, the maker, the creator sets a standard, if you will, and a process by which that standard is met. And the only way that you know if that product is able to meet that standard is to do what? To test it. You have to test it to see just how strong it is, just how weak it may be, just what it can and just what it cannot endure. That's the only way you ever know, is by pushing it till it's breaking. These tests do not come to hurt us. They come to help us. God cannot know exactly where you are in your walk with Him without that test that comes behind the trial. The test after the trial is so that God will know just how well you responded in your trial. Did they grow like I wanted? Did their faith grow deeper? Did they get weaker or did they get stronger? The times of testing are crucial and they are vital. And during these times of testing, I would love to once again say that the enemy is going to leave you alone. But the times of testing, as he puts you through the ringer, so to speak, can be quite painful. This is when the enemy loves to come at you with the spirit of discontent. I shouldn't have to go through this. I didn't ask for this. I've been serving you. Understand, Joseph has done nothing wrong. Joseph has served him all along the way through the pits and through the trials and through the hellish hallways of life. He has stayed faithful. Yet here he is, being bent and tested to his breaking point. How easy for us is it to begin to grumble in those times? How easy do we get that spirit of just being unhappy? You ever talk to somebody that way, man, they will suck the life right out of you. Amen, Pastor, that's true, good preaching. I'll say it. Because that's the truth. You get around somebody that's always negative. You get around somebody who's given in to doubt and depression. You get around somebody that's given in to discontent, and they're never happy. They're not happy with what they have. They're not happy with their marriage. And then you wonder why God isn't blessing you. Why would He? You wouldn't be happy anyway. You wouldn't be happy anyway. You just want more. You'd find something else to gripe about. Because you've given in to the spirit of depression and doubt and discontent in these testing times in your life. Joseph never did that. Joseph never gave in to those tests. And let me tell you something. This boy was tested and tried and true. Because here's yet another test. He has been faithful from the pit to slavery. Now he's found favor at Potiphar's house. He is raised up, found favor there. All of a sudden, Potiphar's wife thinks Joseph's pretty cute. Begins to throw herself at him sexually. Makes advance after advance after Joseph, which he continues to turn down. You see, the enemy loves to try to get you to defile yourself. If he can't get you with doubt, if he can't get you with depression, if he can't get you to gripe and complain and grumble, then let me see exactly what I can get you with. Maybe I can get you to defile yourself. And one of the first things you'll use, and guys, listen up. Ladies too. Is sexual immorality. He uses it daily. Pornography. Multi-billion-dollar industry. One of the largest, highest paying industries in the world. It's pornography. Let that sink in. Divorce rates at their highest. Let that sink in. You see how the enemy begins to work? He doesn't let up. He doesn't relent. We're always wanting to have this moment where we get to go, all right, I can put my guard down. Absolutely not, because he will not stop. He keeps coming and he keeps coming and he keeps testing and he keeps testing, just like you are in a process of quality control. He is going to find some place that he can attack you. I like that Joseph stays faithful. He doesn't do anything wrong. He doesn't give in. So she gets angry. Hell has no fury like a woman's going. And she lies. She tells her husband he tried to rape me, basically. He threw himself at me. So his husband wants to believe that. And then now Joseph finds himself unduly thrown into a prison, locked and chained up. even though he's been faithful to God during those trials and during those times. Can you imagine what he must be thinking again? God, I'm faithful to you. God, I didn't even do anything. You saw how many times I said no. You saw how many times it was right there. I avoided it. I dodged it. I literally gave her my jacket and bailed and ran from the situation.